Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash. Double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth with sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in the four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Brakah the Yahweh, Brakah the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So, renewed tariffs are there. And we got a false flag that just happened over the weekend. And I say false flag, even though, okay, yeah, they did kill a cartel leader. These are all staged events, just like Captain Kirk last year. They wanted you to have your feelings about it. I mean, if you know, say you're like me and you go on Facebook every now and then, but Facebook wants you to comment whether you support ISIS or you don't. You know, so they're really trying to get that divide, you know, just like they were doing with Captain Kirk. Because Captain Kirk was a fucking racist piece of shit. But a lot of people had mixed feelings about it, right? Because, oh, you know, you gotta feel something for it. Even though, okay, he was killed by the Israelis. I mean, it was a Mossad assassination. But you were supposed to feel something about it because they want you to feel certain things. Well, you're supposed to feel something about ISIS. You know, you're supposed to support ISIS or you don't support ISIS. They want that divide. Well, they're trying to do that now with ISIS and with, of course, the shootings. I call them shootings, right? I mean, because they killed the cartel leader, right? You know, so that way you support Donald Trump, you know, the MAGA, you know, or you don't support Donald Trump and you're, you know, on the liberal side. I mean, they're doing everything they can to divide everything up, whether it's working or not, but this is the next series of events. And then, of course, to support war, well, they got to get the people on their side, right? To support a war against Iran. You know, like right now, they're not going to support the war against Iran. But what they are going to do, though, is that they are going to just detest it, you know, to a certain extent. You're not going to see a lot of opposition. Most people, they've already gotten between the chemtrails and everything else, the lithium that's in the chemtrails, you know, getting people neutered and all that, not to mention they got themselves vaccinated, you know, with the juicy juice. So they don't really feel nothing about this or that. You know, they've been taking their, you know, calmness. I mean, you know, if you feel anything mentally about anything, they tell you to take this for this, take this for that, take this. And most people are just comfortably numb. Okay, most people are comfortably numb because they're artificial. No wonder why Esau calls it artificial intelligence. But, I know that's on a tangent, but nonetheless, though, what they are trying to do is dummy up. They're dummying up for the next set of events. And we're on the beginning of those series of events, as I believe Donald Trump is about to do another State of the Union address. I'm not sure if that happened or not, but either way, though, you know, we're about a little less than 3 months into this, and yet at the same time, though, the spring equinox is right before us, and the spring equinox is really, truly the beginning of the year. You know, the beginning of the year is never supposed to be around winter. You know, if you look at the lunar calendar, you know, which happens to match the true calendar, you know, if you were allowed to see one. We've been under Rome for so long that it's hard to see, but nonetheless, the third week into the you know, lunar moon, or the lunar year, that is, begins the Passover. So as we're headed towards the Passover, we're starting to see a lot of things form. And this war with Iran, at least the beginnings of it, could happen right as we're commemorating, or right after we commemorate, or even before we commemorate the Passover, you know, which is a very sacred time. Nonetheless, though, you know, your tariff king, you know, that fierce king and cruel lord, has renewed the tariffs, as, you know, the Supreme Court just over Friday had turned down his tariffs. So he's got new ones. Future slide as renewed tariff turmoil shakes global markets. Stock futures slumped under Trump's weekend tariff tantrum. You know, because he had a temper tantrum. This is all being staged anyways. Added to uncertainty of American trade policy and was another blow to bullish outlooks for 2026. Supreme Court's tariff ruling meant big score of fiscal revenue for 2025 may have to be refunded. Although if it is refunded to U.S. customers who bore the brunt of tariffs, as most liberals' analysis concluded, it would represent a huge pre-midterm stimulus. Oh, stimulus checks. Here we go with the stimulus again. As of 0800 hours ET, S&P futures were 0.5% lower, giving up almost all Friday gains, while NASDAQ, so like everything else though, they would have to pay that back. So like everything else though, if a war breaks out and all that, and the government's in a partial shutdown as it stands anyways, and it's over this ISIS thing. So they got to get you to feel something about ISIS. And they got to get you to feel something about this. Backing the Israeli state cost Democrats 2024 election. Election post-mortem reveals. Well, like everything else, though, Donald Trump was meant to be the next king anyways, because King Bibi had an easier way of controlling Donald Trump because he was, I guess, more over the files than Biden, even though Biden has proven to be a child molester. I mean, this guy really wants your kids, right? I mean, you can see him fondling kids during his whole presidency, but nonetheless, though, Donald Trump was easier to manipulate, so, they got to give you this, violin, they lost the election because, they catered to the Israeli state, because now they act like they oppose the Israeli state, when the Israeli state is just another dividend of the United States. It's just Amalekites control Babylon, which they have been in control for a long time. This is the place where they, traded a boy for a harlot, etc. Support for Israeli state was key factor in the 2024 loss of the presidential election. Internal Democrat autopsy was found. According to a report by Axios, senior party officials concluded that Joe Biden's unwavering backing of the Israeli genocide against Gaza cost the Democrats critical support among younger and progressive voters. And that might be true to some sort of way, because Democrats are given this idea, no guns, and, just nothing but diplomacy, no war, right? No war. Well, they see that that was far from it, so yeah, they started turning against them. Internal analysis reportedly found that Vice President Harris replaced Biden as a Democratic nominee, lost significant backing due to widespread anger over the administration's blank check for Israeli Prime Minister King Bibi, or Satan Yahoo, as we know him to be. So they're saying that the majority of Americans were strongly opposed to Israelis' military assault against Gaza. Several polls showed at the time opposition amongst younger voters was much higher. So those that were Democrats really were opposed to it too. Revelation that senior Democrats privately concluded Gaza policy cost them votes is likely to intensify debate within the party ahead of the 2026 midterms. Activists called on the DNC to release the findings in full. So like everything else, both parties support King Bibi. We definitely know Donald Trump does. But here's the false flag of the year. This is the main one. To get everybody to support ISIS, right? Mexican army kills leader of powerful Jalisco new generation cartel during operation to capture him. To make you think that ISIS are the good guys. That they're the good guys. We're trying to defeat cartels. We're doing everything we can. Even though America controls the drugs, these are nothing more, the cartels are nothing more than U.S. supported, by backing of, it's a long story, but getting back to it though, the U.S. is responsible for the drugs, and then they run it through Mexico, and a lot of these retired renegades, that couldn't get a job elsewhere became part of the cartel, aka ex-soldiers. So it really is more of a part of the U.S., but they're going to blame the other people, right? It's got to be the Mexicans, right? Mexican army killed the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel on Sunday, decapitating what became Mexico's most powerful drug cartel and thrusting swaths of the nation into chaos. The drug lord was the the Mexican government's biggest prize yet to show the Trump administration's efforts to crack down on the cartels, and his death was met with a forceful reaction from the cartel. So, like everything else, though, the chaos had erupted because, you got to believe that Donald Trump he's trying to go after cartels. He's a good guy. ISIS are really good guys. They're trying to get rid of the drug problem here in Babylon, even though they're the ones that created it. They sell their drugs to Canada all the time. But of course the Mexicans get the blame for it, right? Cars burned out by cartel members blocked roads at more than 215 points in 20 Mexican states, authorities said, and left smoke billowing into the air. Guadalajara was turned into a ghost town Sunday night as civilians hunkered down. School was canceled Monday in several states. Authorities in Jalisco and were reported at least 14 dead, including several. So you got to believe that they're fighting a war against drugs, even though America supplies the drugs themselves and then blames others. Isn't that nice? They got a good false flag going, to get everybody to support ISIS. Because ISIS is really, really there to help, even though they're shooting people right and left. Just to say that, anybody who's in opposition to ISIS, even though they don't have to uncover their faces or whatever, right? Esau being the cowardless pig that he has always been. Anyway, U.S. intel aided special forces in El Mencho kill as spillover risks rise. CNN reported that U.S. provided intelligence support to Mexican Army special forces aided by aircraft and the National Guard's immediate reaction force during the operation to capture cartel leader. The operation, however, devolved into a fierce firefight with CJNG operatives in El Munco that ultimately resulted in his death. So, like everything else, though, they say that the cartel is retaliating. I believe that there's some truth to that. This is all being staged. The world is a stage, as you know. So, like everything else, though, ISIS is really helping to get the cartels out of Babylon, right? Yeah, Trump is the good guy. Everybody wants to make America great again. And you got a lot of MAGA wannabes. Nonetheless, though, things are turning up. I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and so, like everything else, though, ISIS, this is going to get strong support for ISIS with this recent set of events, and we're going to look at, World Alternative Media and his take on this whole thing.
Hey everybody, John Sigurdsson, World Alternative Media here, and I got woken up this morning by my wife telling me that Puerto Vallarta is at war. Now, this is something that makes me incredibly sad. As I report this, just outside my window, there are cars on fire, there's buildings on fire, there's bombs going off, and there's a sound of gunfire. And it's something that, I've lived here in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico for 6 years now, one of the safest places I've ever been. And it makes me sick to my stomach thinking where this might go in the next 48 to 72 hours. I know a lot of people wanted an update, so I'm here to give an update on what's happening.
So yeah, he lives in the area.
This is a photo I did not take, but it was posted online earlier. This is a place very close to where I live. This is City Hall in the background. Now, this I did take, but that was just the beginning of it. As I wrote on X at @WorldAltMedia, well, for the first time in a very long time, there is a narco-police war breaking out here in Puerto Vallarta. Stay-inside order has been made as cars are set aflame after an apparent arrest of El Mencho. Well, it turned out it was a killing of El Mencho, the head of the cartel here. Exactly why it's best to not mess with the cartel. But, of course, it's a U.S. government's intervention with the Mexican government and the military here, which puts a lot of people at risk. This is an OXXO by my place. Bombed. OXXO is like the 7-Eleven of Mexico, if you aren't aware. I'm going to go into a little bit more of this. I have to, just for the sake of the fact that I've been away for a while covering Acapulco, where attendees are still here in Puerto Vallarta, and dealing with this, and stuck in hotels, and unable to get out of the country right now. And, okay, I want to make it clear that we are safe. Everyone's safe if they are inside their home. Walking in the street in plain clothes, it's not a good time to do that. I would usually never urge people to follow the, pushed by the state, hey, stay-at-home order. But honestly, right now, I would definitely do that because they can't tell between plainclothes and cartel or the military and all that. It's just there's drones, there's U.S. drones spotted flying around here. This is exactly, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you've seen me talk about this. My voice is hoarse, my lungs are hoarse because I just breathed in some really toxic stuff outside, taking photos of what is happening around here. I'm sick to my stomach about this. As an asthmatic, I'm also sick to my lungs. I'm going to get into it more. I have to mention, because we need the help we can get, and with the potential of electricity being down for days, I was just about to post one of my 10-plus interviews I had. Please help support us if you can. We need it. We need it badly. GoGetFunny.com, Patreon, killing. Things are absolutely going crazy here. In Guadalajara, in Puerto Vallarta, in Veracruz. And El Mencho is very famous here in Mexico, and people will say, well, this is evidence of it being unsafe. How many riots and buildings have you seen burned down in U.S. cities in the past few years? It's been since like the 90s that we saw anything crazy like this in Puerto Vallarta. Apparently, aircraft are being set on fire. The whole idea is to tighten restrictions around people leaving or transportation and freeing people from prison and stuff like that in order to like destroy the ability of police to be able to focus or function, which would lead to them eventually giving in. But I don't know what they're going to give in on because they killed El Mencho. What could they possibly give in on at this point? They killed El Mencho, which is crazy. Again, people don't understand what this means for people that live here on the ground. The hundreds of thousands of people, their families, their kids. But people just think of a foreign country when they think of, oh, well, Trump and the U.S. government and the CIA and all these groups are going to cause problems, come in as a solution, bomb people, kill people.
Yep.
And everything is just
and they are.
No, this has a real world effect on people that live here. And countless people that were just at Acapulco who are safe as long as they are within the confines of their building and everything. But it's just so sad because this is not what Puerto Vallarta is. You saw me with the freedom community here for years, if you've been watching my videos.
So like everything else, though, Trump wants to act like the savior of the city, right? You know, causing chaos everywhere. You know, so you can be painted as a hero, so you'll support ISIS, and you'll be a MAGA. You'll be a MAGA wannabe. U.S. hails Mexico after cartel drug lord killed. You know, again, U.S. Military with the Mexico military, you know, conducted an operation and killed the so-called cartel leader, right? El Mencho was wounded during a joint operation led by the Mexican army in the town of Tapalta in the western side of Jalisco and later died while being flown into Mexico City, the Mexican Defense Ministry said. He led the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of Mexico's most powerful groups, and allegedly a major supplier of fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamines to the U.S. market. So, you know, they just want you to believe that, oh, Mexico's the one that brings methamphetamine, that, it can't be the U.S. people working with them. No, it's got to be Mexicans, right? You know, so every Mexican, you know, they're the bad guy. Oh, not Esau. Oh, don't blame Esau, right? But at least the flock shall draw them out, right? I mean, while that's all going on there with that false flag and distraction, yet at the same time, the least the flock shall draw them out, shall make the habitations desolate with them, right? As Michael Maloof, who's an insider, goes into here on this RT report. And of course, like everything else, though, the least the flock shall draw them out, and Israeli state to make their habitations desolate because of them, right? Because of the support of the Israeli state and their continuous war, you know, as they occupy more lands. And Mike Huckabee, you know, just saying how great that would be that the Israeli state could take as much as they want to.
Let's cross now live to former Pentagon senior security policy analyst Michael Maloof. Mike, I'm glad to have you join me right now. So, Mike, Huckabee called the Gaza Health Ministry a dubious entity, adding that Israel has the capacity to kill all the children in less than a day if it wanted to. What is your reaction to the ambassador's statement? Is this the face that the U.S. wants to show to the world?
It's Mike Huckabee, who represents the United States, doing all that he can to protect the U.S. proxy, and that's Israel. Look, the Israelis knew exactly what they were doing, the military especially. You had rabbis in the IDF openly preaching that. You've heard Smotrich and Ben Gvir, members of the Netanyahu cabinet, openly professing the killing of these children because they grow up to become Hamas. That was their excuse, and they made it an effort to not only be indiscriminate, but you could see that they did this with on entire tent cities that the Palestinians were living in, and most of them were occupied by women and children and the elderly. And so this is Mike Huckabee trying to put a favorable face on things, but it just doesn't fly, and it's pathetic. And I would add too that Huckabee has also,
which I call him
the
Fuckabee.
Israelis in their Greater Israel campaign, claiming that it goes back to the Old Testament, that they can extend their territories from the Euphrates to the Nile. And this
That's the Valley of Jehoshaphat, by the way.
The Christian doctrine that he comes from here in the United States. They're highly supportive of Israel. In Huckabee's eyes, the Israelis could do no wrong, and he didn't hear him condemn it.
Now, in another interview to Fox News, Huckabee said that Israel should have to pay a cent to rebuild Gaza, alluding to the fact that Israel should be entitled to reparation. But the question is, by whom?
Well, that's a good question. They should ask Mike Huckabee what he's talking about. Look, he's a big supporter of Israel. You can't distinguish him from the Israelis. He's been a supporter of Israel for years, even before he became the ambassador. So he's even though he's a Christian, his denomination has totally embraced the Israelis and their cause, no matter what. And even though October 7th was a bad time a few years ago when Israel was attacked without warning, that's questionable as well. What has happened since, and the amount of devastation that the Israelis have imposed upon the Palestinians in Gaza is reprehensible and should be condemned by the world. And Mike Huckabee, however, is just an apologist for the Israelis.
All right, let's leave it here for now. But Michael, I'll come back to you again for us to talk about other issues that you even have mentioned earlier. Thank you very much, Michael Malu, former Pentagon Senior Security Policy Analyst. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, throughout the lengthy interview, Mike Huckabee attempted to justify U.S. actions as well, including against Iraq. The envoy also made it clear that it would be, quote, fine if Israel were to take over the entire Middle East, adding that the Bible gives the Jewish state that right.
Yep.
You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land, and you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right.
That's the Valley of Jehoshaphat,
And
by the way.
that would include like basically the entire Middle East. I mean,
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the
it
point.
would be a lot of places that are now countries that
This particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose.
what does that mean? Does Israel have the right?
But the
to that land?
Israelites
Because you're
are not
appealing
these
to
fake-ass
Genesis. You're
Jews.
saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
There it is.
Meanwhile, a reminder here, in recent years, the concept of Greater Israel has gained wider support in Israel. The plan lays claim to the
Esau wants the
occupied West
blessing.
Bank, Gaza, parts of Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and even Jordan. The coalition of 31 Arab and
Yet that's
Islamic
where all the
countries,
problems
as well as
are,
the
aren't
Arab
they?
League have called the concept blatant and dangerous violation of the rules of international law. The Saudi Arabian Foreign Ministry has also condemned the ambassador's comments.
This extremist rhetoric portends grave consequences and threatens international peace and security by antagonizing the countries and peoples of the region and undermining the foundations of the international order. An order collectively established by nations to put an end to devastating wars that claimed millions of lives, and that upholds respect for the geographical borders of states and their sovereignty over their territories.
And once again, let's connect with Michael Maloof now, former Pentagon Senior Security Policy Analyst. Michael, I'm glad to have you stay with us. Now, what do you think about Huckabee's statements about Israel having the God-given right to take over the entire Middle East?
Well, he's citing Talmudic law and text from the Old Testament, and unfortunately, the current administration in Tel Aviv back that wholeheartedly. They believe that this is part of their greater Israel campaign and effort that would include countries like Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, parts of Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. I mean, this is what they have, and we already see them now trying to carry that out, not only into the West Bank, which is their Judea, Samaria areas, but also now in southern Lebanon and in portions of Syria. So they also have secret bases in Iraq. So the Israelis are trying to secretly and overtly take over these areas as part of that Old Testament mandate.
And like everything else, though, to give the world the illusion that they're the Jews, but they are not. They are the synagogue of Satan. You know, they are not the real Jews. And see, that's controversy, and they'll eventually shut this down. But nonetheless, though, he's mad. He's mad because, of course, that interview with Tucker Carlson has been leaked out. U.S. Ambassador Huckabee says Israeli state at war with Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and Jordan. Oh, isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? Those are two of the places spoken about, right? Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israeli state during his Senate Foreign Relations Committee confirmation hearing on 25th of March 2025. Huckabee, U.S. ambassador to the Israeli state, said that the Israeli state is at war with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and Jordan as part of a seven-front war, which they want. Former governor of the state of Arkansas, speaking in an interview on the Carlson show on Friday, I keep hearing Israeli fighting a seven-front war right now. What are those seven fronts? Carlson asked during one fierce, fiery exchange. Well, you got Lebanon, you have Egypt, said Huckabee, to which Carlson sought clarification. Egypt is not an actual war, but you have the Muslim Brotherhood within Egypt, said Huckabee. You've got Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan, you got Syria. So like everything else, so, just keep on taking territories. It'd be fine. He defends the killing of children in Gaza.
I wish that none of those people in Gaza had been killed after October 8th. Well, I say not.
Oh, you gotta save
I'm
face,
glad
piece
Mohammed
of shit.
Sinwar was killed. I'm glad that some of those warriors, the
There you
people
go.
who masterminded and carried out the atrocities of October 7th,
14-year-old Hamas operatives, how do you feel about their deaths?
if they participated in that, then God help them. I'm telling you,
What does
Tucker,
that mean, God
I don't know
help them? Are you
that
happy
they were
that-
14 years. No, but I'm telling you that when someone commits the acts of atrocity, and then
Which
they
that's a
hold
false
hostages,
flag,
if
by
these
the
were
way.
your children being held hostage in Gaza.
Piece of
What would you
shit.
do to get them out?
I wouldn't want to kill 14-year-olds, I'll tell you that.
Let me ask you something. Would you do whatever it took to get your kids back if they were being tortured?
Yeah, you gotta
raped,
justify
starved,
it.
I would not
beaten?
kill children, period.
Well, I'm just telling you.
And I
that
would
you
never make
It's okay.
excuses for killing children
you wouldn't-
either.
And I'm not talking about targeting children. I'm talking
You
about.
told me that 14-year-olds deserve to die because they're working for Hamas.
I'm telling
And
you-
my question is, can you hear yourself?
I do hear myself.
So do you think a 14-year-old child has agency? Do you think that he deserves to die because he's being used by adults? Isn't his death a crushing
If
tragedy?
he's holding a gun and he's pointing it at someone who's trying to save a hostage, and the only way to
There was no
save that
hostage situation.
I'm telling you,
That was a
war is horrible
hoax.
thing. It's a horrible thing, and a lot of innocent
I think I'm the
people
one
die.
who thinks war is a horrible thing.
No. I think what you don't
I'm
understand.
trying to explain how horrible it is, and you're saying that the 14-year-old deserved to die.
Yep. And like everything else, Fuckabee ain't too happy because, of course, he's pointing out the obvious and he's justifying it. And we met with Carlson before, because he, like any reporter, he asks good questions, right? And so, yeah, he once ran into us. He ran into the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. And he asked questions. He's like, wait a minute, if I'm an Edomite, and he was asking questions. He was just inquiring of that like a reporter would, whether he believed the report or not. Nonetheless, though, he's doing what a reporter should be doing, asking questions, and questions are good, but like everything else, though, he's getting a little scrutiny for what he did when he questioned the Israeli state and what they're doing. Could his glimpse of us, making our claim that we're the Israelites, have affected him? Well, only time will tell, but nonetheless, though, he did condemn the Israeli state recently, and he's getting a lot of scrutiny over that because he dared to question Fuckabee. I call him Fuckabee because it's just a Edomite piece of shit ambassador, nothing more than just a saving face, because Esau has been portraying himself as the Jew for a long time, and like everything else, so the self-proclaiming Jew, as well as self-proclaiming Christian, this image that he gives, but he's none of the sort. He is the devil, Satan, that the Bible speaks of. U.S. Senator Graham praises United Arab Emirates for doing everything Israeli state asked for, and more during the Gaza war. Israeli Prime Minister King Bibi was amazed at the level of support received by the Gulf state, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham said Monday. Because like everything else, though, they show that they're the true Zionists. U.S. Senator Graham helped praise the United Arab Emirates President Mohammed Zayed for supporting the Israeli state on Monday, telling reporters that the Gulf leader had done everything asked and more to back the far-right King Bibi's government. King Bibi wanted me to tell the press that he's amazing by the level of cooperation and the significance of the partnership with the United Arab Emirates with the Israeli state, he told. So like everything else, so they want to all hail King Bibi, because King Bibi is going to do it, King Bibi is going to make their habitations desolate. Going to make their habitations desolate because of them, that is Babylon the Great, as he draws them further into the war. U.S. pulls hundreds of troops from Qatar, Bahrain, amid Iran war buildup. The troops withdrawal comes after Iran officially warned the UN that all U.S. bases, facilities, and assets will be considered legitimate targets when attacked. So it's just a matter of when. Hundreds of troops have been evacuated from military bases in Bahrain and Qatar in what officials describe as a precautionary move. The pullout involved personnel from Al Udeid Air Base in Doha, the largest U.S. military installation in West Asia, with about 10,000 troops, as well as facilities in Bahrain, where the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet is based. U.S. officials later denied the troops were withdrawn. Roughly 30,000 to 40,000 troops remain stationed across 13 military bases across West Asia. Troop evacuation comes days after Iran, in a formal letter to the UN, warned that all bases, facilities, and assets of the hostile force in the region would constitute legitimate targets, adding that the United States would bear full and direct responsibility for any unpredictable and uncontrolled consequences. Iran has repeatedly stated at the highest level that it neither seeks tension nor war, and will not initiate any war, the statement read. But like everything else, though, they want to provoke them to war. Witkoff says Trump is curious why Iran hasn't capitulated. Oh yeah, we'll threaten you by force. We'll bring in all these fleets, and you better capitulate. You better do what we say. You better suck my dick. And they're not so easy to give him a blowjob. I don't want to use the word frustrated because Trump understands he has plenty of alternatives, but he's curious. He's bi-curious as to why they haven't. I don't want to use the word capitulated, but they haven't captured, Witkoff told Fuck News hosting Laura Trump, the president's daughter-in-law. Why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there? Why they haven't come to us and said, because they don't want to suck his dick. They're not cocksuckers, you know? Unlike everybody else that sucks his cock. You know, like India sucked his cock, and a lot of those other places sucked his cock, you know, due to the tariffs and everything else. Oh, we ain't gonna deal, we won't deal with Russia. We'll suck your dick, you know? We'll give you head. Tehran's official position is that it doesn't seek nuclear weapons, and the development of such weapons as banned by fatwa issued by Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, and Iranian leaders reportedly profess they don't seek a nuclear bomb, but it's still being used as a pretext. So like everything else, though, they just want to know why they won't capitulate, why they won't suck dick. Well, maybe they're not cocksuckers. Maybe they can't be bullied like India and other places over there. Or like United Arab Emirates, does everything the Israeli state says, and then, you know, gets a nice little passive little kiss, you know, and say thank you. Thank you, Satan. IRGC's Shavid Madari warship completes first long-duration mission and returns home. So like everything else, though, you know, they're preparing for war. Let all the men wake up, right? You know, prepare for war. Domestically developed ocean-going warship operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy entered Iran's territorial waters after completing a long-term voyage to participate in joint Navy drills with BRICS nations. The Shavid Madar, which is a multi-purpose vessel designed for long-range operations, returned home more than 57 days of voyage and was welcomed by IRGC commander. So like everything else, though, you know, they're preparing for war because they know that Babylon the Great, with the Israeli state's about to attack, and they're warning about the repercussions. Now, like everything else, though, as they do retaliate, you know, I could see a clear scenario here that it would gain support, especially if you know, a lot of their so-called Americans were killed in this war. You know, killed for doing that, and then they'll support them, even though it was the wrong thing to do. I mean, they did with Desert Storm. They did that with Operation Iraqi Freedom, and no time at all. They wanted to take down this tyrant, Saddam Hussein. And they're treating Iran like it's Saddam Hussein. They're treating Ayatollah Khamenei as if he was Saddam Hussein. That they can win a war against him. So it's like, yeah, let's get that bastard, right? You know, and they'll all hail after this event that takes place. For right now, they're opposing him, but later they'll all hail the taking down of Iran. Iran vows for ferocious retaliation as Trump weighs limited strike. Spokesman for the Iranian Parliament's National Security Committee said that this week's negotiations will determine whether U.S. soldiers go to hell or return home. And go to hell basically means dies. Okay, go to hell, Shael. You know, that means hell is the grave. Hell is death. Or return home. So whether they die or they come home. Iran vowed on the 23rd of February to treat any limited U.S. strike as a war and retaliate accordingly, after President Trump confirmed to reporters that he was considering a small-scale attack aimed at pressuring the Islamic Republic into accepting his terms. He rejected the U.S. claims that Iran seeks to stall the negotiations, vowing continued readiness for diplomacy as long as the talks led to results. So, you know, pressure by force, you know, and so you got the lineup here. Now here's the pitch. So, surely Lisa Flock shall draw them out, right? America into this war. Surely shall make their habitations desolate because of them, right? So we're seeing all of them gather into that valley, the valley of Yehoshaphat. So, like everything else, though, we're seeing the build-up there, and we're seeing Esau exposed. These Epstein files are still out there, don't get me wrong. He's still being exposed on that, but you got a lot of distractions with the cartels, etc., right? But here it is. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 10, it reads, I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places. He should not be able to hide himself. His descendants are plundered, his brethren and his neighbors, and he is no more. What does that mean? That's talking about the fact that it's nowhere for him to hide. He can't hide behind the innocents anymore, but also he is marked for death in every way possible. He's marked by the angels of the Most High, which they have confirmed. UFOs, aka aliens, do exist, in that they are entities, and you have the other reports. They want you to think it's little green men, but you've heard the other reports that these were black men that looked like African Americans that had been seen, but they were very tall. And like everything else, though, they're about to be destroyed. Because the Israelites, were not supposed to be, we were not supposed to drink of the cup, but we surely have drunk of the cup. And Esau is about to be punished. Behold, those whose drink was not to drink of the cup have assuredly drunk. This is verse 12. And are you the one who will go altogether unpunished? He thinks he can just keep on doing what he does. You will not go unpunished, but you shall surely drink of it. For I have sworn by myself, saith the Most High Yahweh, that Basra, another term for America, shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual waste. And like everything else, though, we're seeing the lead up, the least of the flock drawing them in. I've heard a message from the Most High Yahweh. An ambassador has been sent to the nations, gathered together and come against her and rise to the battle. And that's why you see the formations build, including Russia, Russia, China, and all of them getting ready to fight Esau in West Asia. And like everything else, so who's going to do it? Well, the Israeli state, because they want the greater Israel project. Therefore, hear the counsel of the Most High that he has taken against Edom, verse 20. And his purpose is that he has purposed against the inhabitants of Teman, which is talking about Basra, aka Babylon. Surely the least the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their dwelling places desolate with them. Meaning that they're going to be completely destroyed and burned to pieces. And that is in the Third World War, which is coming quickly. So hopefully this has been edifying. Got one more here before I close this out. For that I want to say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatam, Jehovah Elect, Shalom.
Fair use, fair use, fair use, fair use. Under the 1976 allowance section, fair use such as criticisms, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research and prophecy. Fair use is the Copyright Act, the 1976 Copyright Act. So, as always, first let's give all the praises and the glory to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and to His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. To the learners, to the apostles, to the elders, the bishops, the great millstone, shalom to you. Shalom to the hopeful elect brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. The Bible says many are born, few are chosen. So, as you can see from the title, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out, shall draw America out. Them is America, Babylon the Great. The least of the flock is, as we know today, is Israel. So this is Daniel Davis, Colonel Daniel Davis on his Deep Dive channel podcast. He gives some really good podcasts, He's a good podcast to be subscribed to. Daniel Davis Deep Dive. He's very very honest in his podcast. As you can see from the title, he's got a podcast, Trump Rescues Presidency if he chooses war with Iran, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. So I'm going to give you a bit more update on what's going on and that, because things are moving fast and they're moving in the right direction. Let's start with a little bit of here with Daniel Davis, and then we'll keep it moving.
Or will there be war in Iran? Might it start even tonight? That's what we're going to try to figure out. And there has been, even just in the last 24 hours, not quite yet on that, Gary. The last 24 hours has been a lot of information, and a lot of additional planes have landed here. Let me just give you a few of the issues that really indicate that something is coming very big and likely coming very soon. About 15% of the global fleet of aerial refueling tankers, about 58 in the last about 48 hours, have deployed into zones where they can launch an attack from. That is an enormous. I think that brings to the total 109 aerial refueling tankers. There are somewhere between, depending on who's doing the counting and what they're counting, somewhere between 200 and 250 fighter aircraft on top of a lot of the deployments that have already existed. Some of the things that are within range there. And as Gary's showing you there, some of them are located in Jordan. Some others are to satellite imagery released by the Chinese of all people. Some are in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're literally all over the map. Very periodic.
So, see, he's given the Iranians the information, the satellite information of where the US fighter jets are and where the refueling planes are. It's the Chinese. Because the Chinese are going to back the Iranians in this war, right? And I said this before, you know, a lot of their backing will come from logistics and from satellite information of where the US warplanes are, you know, where their bases are, their planes are, you know, where their refueling planes are, where they basically camped out. So it's Chinese that gave this, right? So I was kind of looking this up just to confirm it, right? And this was it here. We'll go back to standing. This is dozens of US military aircraft land at the base in Jordan, right? So it says here, according to the US sources on February 20th, Jordan's Mawafa Salti Air Base may serve as a key hub for potential US military planning related to strikes on Iran. Satellite imagery from the same day, right, showed more than 60 US military aircraft deployed at the base, roughly 3 times the usual number. The images also showed F-35 fighter jets, multiple drones, helicopters, new air defense systems were also reportedly installed on the site. So it's the Chinese that gave the Iranians the information, right? This is CGTN. That's Chinese. That's like one of the Chinese they call it like government channels, right? So they gave the information to the Iranians, right, where those bases are. So what the Iranians did, right, just to show the Americans that they know what's going on. This is what Iran did last night. Once again, putting out another message to Babylon the Great, right? So listen to what here. Play this video here, right? This is what the Iranians did last night. They put this together last night to let the Americans know. We know where your warplanes are, where your refueling planes are, that you've got hidden out in some of those Muslim countries that have sold out. Because Jordan is completely controlled by Israel, right? That's the one Muslim country that's controlled by Israel in America, is Jordan, right? And always has been. And remember, Jordan is what? Jordan is what we know the Bible refers to as Edom, right? That's where Mount Seir and Edom originally is, right? It's in what we know today as Jordan, right? Petra, right? But anyway, let's just play this. This is what the Iranians put together last night. They put this AI video together last night and sent it to America, to the embassy, to let them know we know and we are ready, we're good to go.
Iran has threatened to bomb a major US military base in a chilling propaganda video as Donald Trump prepares for fully fledged war with his mega armada. The terrifying AI footage marks up Muwafaq Salti, a key airbase in Jordan, for obliteration. The video shows Iranian missiles targeting dozens of F-35 stealth jets, refueling tankers, and MQ-9 Reaper drones. Iranian state media posted the clip last week as Trump's ever-growing armada closes in on the rogue state. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has warned his country will not bow its head to US pressure to agree to a nuclear deal. 60 aircraft were seen at Muwafaq Salti, around triple the amount normally stationed there in satellite imagery on Friday. At least 68 cargo planes have landed at the US hub since last Sunday. The aircraft have been scrambled to Jordan as fears of a regional conflict continue to mount. The report suggests the US president is now considering a massive weeks-long campaign that would look more like a fully fledged war.
Weeks-long campaign would look more like a fully fledged war. But that's what they did. They're in there for the long haul, as you're going to hear. You know, this is what I said, the least of the flock. Let's just quickly grab that. We'll go back to Colonel Douglas. Right? This is Jeremiah 49 verse 20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Heavenly Father, which is Yahweh, that he has taken against Edom, which is America, Babylon the Great, and his purposes, that he has purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Right? Surely, the least of the flock, which are the Israelis, shall draw them out, America, Babylon the Great. Surely he shall make their habitation. Right? So what Israel's going to do, these are the two places that are confirmed for complete destruction, right, during this war of Armageddon. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them, and that's exactly what's going to happen. But before we get to the part where Israel becomes a desolation like America, Babylon the Great, as we always tell you, the mark of the beast the microchip must be in play.
Yeah.
But the war can be going on, but nukes are not going to exchange until the chip is in play, right? The mark of the beast chip. That's what it's. So verse 21 says, the earth is moved at the noise of their fall, at the cry. The noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea, right? Remember the scripture speaks about the in Joel chapter 2 that the Lord says that he's going to draw the northern army. He's going to draw the northern army far from its land, basically. I'm just paraphrasing it, right? And his face towards the Persian Gulf, right? His face towards the East Sea, which is the Persian Gulf, and his hinder part towards the utmost sea, which is the Red Sea. And then speaks about his stink shall come up, right? And his ill savor, basically, and shall come up. I think that's what it says. Anyway, that's the northern army who's going to drive them into that barren and desolate land. So who's going to draw them there? It's these Israelis, right? This is what they're going to do. So let's just go back to Colonel Douglas, right? So it's the Chinese that gave the Iranians the information of where America's just landed all of these war jets and their refueling planes, which is beautiful, right? Because we've told you time and time before, the Chinese are on the same side as the Iranians and the Russians, right?
It shows you that one with our bases throughout the region, they're dotted everywhere throughout there. There's also a lot, surprisingly, in European bases. A lot of the things that we can bring to bear here will depart from U.S. air.
These are all American bases, all dotted out through the Middle East. This is why this is known as the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the Valley of Judgment, right? This is the Levant. This is where it's all going to take place, right?
So bases even in Europe. There was a big issue with whether the UK would accept that. More on that in just a minute. But bottom line is here, this is on top of, and one of the other categories I do want to point out is that somewhere around 150 C-17 and C-5 transport. That is literally 50% of the C-17 transport. Those are those great big, almost looking like a 747, but they're for transporting things. You could literally play a game of basketball in the back of one of those. I've when I was on active duty, I several times took a C-17 transport going from one place to another in the Middle East, and it's cavernous. It's like a flying gym. C-5s are even bigger. It's amazing how big those things. Yeah, there it is. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the C-5.
You see how big those things are, and there is an enormous amount of kit and gear and ammunition above all.
The scripture says in Joel chapter 2 verse 20. And the Lord says, behold, let me just quickly read it out. I read this out yesterday, boy, but it may sound like a broken record, boy, but it's exactly what's happening. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, that was the lesson I did yesterday, right, which is America, Babylon the Great, and will drive them into a land barren and desolate, which is the Levant, the Middle East, that land that's barren and desolate. Right, we're looking at this map yesterday. This is it here. This is that barren and desolate land, right, which is the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. This is the desert, right, this is where it's all going to take place. You've got Kuwait here, Iraq, that's Iran, Qatar, UAE, Oman, down here you've got Yemen, up there you've got Turkey, all right, that barren and desolate land. That's what the Lord is doing. Right, that's why they're stopped. That's why all of those half of the US's I forget what he called them. He said they were C-17s. Right, he said that you can fit a whole basketball court inside them. Right, half of the Air Force is there, half of the refueling jets are there, and half of the C-17s that carries equipment and soldiers are there, because that's the fulfillment of prophecy. The Lord said He's gonna remove them far off from the northern army, right, which is America, and will drive them into a land barren and desolate, which is Babylon the Great. Right. So this is it here. So this is the fulfillment of prophecy, right? I read this out yesterday, man. Yes, I do sound like a broken record, but you have to understand, this is the fulfillment of prophecy. With his face towards the East Sea, which is the Persian Gulf, and his hinder part towards the uttermost sea, the Red Sea, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he has done great things. Absolutely. So this is exactly what's happening here. Let's just go back to the to Colonel Davis.
All that can be flown. So that tells you a couple of things. Number one, that this is going to be a sustained operation. This is not going to be a strike like some of the things that have happened in the past. It's not going to be like Operation Midnight Hammer, which was basically a 2-hour.
This is the hammer of the whole world. How is the hammer of the whole world? This is Babylon the Great. This is going to be a long sustain, right? He said this is not going to be like, they can't stop using that word hammer. This is not going to be like Midnight Hammer. This is going to be a sustained hammer, right? As the scripture says, right? How is the hammer? I think it's Jeremiah 15:23. Let's quickly grab that one, right? How is the hammer of the whole world, which is Babylon the Great, America, right? How is that? Jeremiah 50 verse 23. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation amongst the nation? How is that going to happen? The least of the flock shall draw them out, and he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Because Israel's drawing them. Israel is pulling all the strings in this war. That's what you must understand. Israel controls America financially and politically. Controls Babylon the Great, America. The hammer is America, like the generals say. If every problem is a nail, then you are the hammer. All right. So it's in the spirit. They call that mission Midnight Hammer, and they continue to use that phrase, the hammer, the hammer, the hammer, in the spirit. They don't even realize that America is referred to in the Bible as the hammer of the whole earth. They don't even realize that, but that's in the spirit. They're doing that because the Lord has put the spirit on them to refer to themselves as the hammer. All right. Let's go back to Colonel.
Hour operation, where we like Operation Midnight Hammer, which was basically a 2-hour operation, where we allegedly hit, or not allegedly, but hit a couple of nuclear facilities, and then that was the end of it. This is being set up for a sustained campaign, possibly weeks, possibly even months. I mean, we have all the assets there that this can continue on for months in terms of refueling and rearmament. All those things are necessary. When you're talking about this many aircraft coming in from all these different places throughout Europe, throughout the Middle East, it's like flying gas stations. You may have heard some of the descriptions.
Like flying gas stations. The Lord is driving the majority of the American Northern Army to the Middle East. All right? Because this is the final battle takes place in the Middle East. And it begins with the Israelis coming up against the Iranians, and then the rest of the parties are going to get involved. That's why the Israelis is the least of the flock. That's the one that drew America into this war.